Assalamu alaikum guys. This is my collection is here. In this video I am going to tell you that returning from the site of the shipwreck, Ain and Katara are greeted by many angry faces in the village, their accidental triggering of a flare on the ship having warned the Fire Nation of their presence. Because of the mishap, the safety of the village has been compromised. A bitter argument ensues, in which Sokka decides to banish Ain from the Southern Water Tribe for his perceived betrayal, an action Kunna agrees with. Outraged by the decision, Katara initially resolves to leave with Ain, who had offered to take her to the Northern Water Tribe to find a master waterbender who could teach her. However, Sokka asks her if she would actually choose Ain over her own family. As Ain states that he does not want to come between Katara and her family, she rethinks her decision and sadly decides to stay. A downcast Ain and Appa depart from the village, setting course for the Southern Air Temple, where Ain previously lived. Frustrated that they have banished Ain, Katara snaps angrily at her grandmother, leaving Kunna looking saddened. Sokka hurriedly readies the young children for the imminent combat with the Fire Nation. Meanwhile, Ain and Appa rest on a wind-carved ice formation and Ain, acting as if Appa can talk to him, tells Appa somewhat dejectedly that he liked Katara. Ain suddenly spots Zuko's ship approaching the village and, realizing the severity of their predicament, he quickly decides to help defend his new friends, leaving a dozing Appa behind. Sokka and Zuko prepare individually for their nearing encounter. Zuko dons a traditional Fire Nation soldier's uniform and helmet, while Sokka readies his weapons and applies war paint to his face. In time, Zuko's ship arrives at Wolf Cove. Its mere approach collapses Sokka's makeshift walls and towers. Sokka continues to stand bravely, only balking in order to avoid the ramp that descends from the ship. Zuko quickly descends, accompanied by a few soldiers. Sokka charges at him, but the more experienced Zuko requires only his bare hands to counter Sokka's primitive weaponry, and he is almost dismissive of his presence at first. Zuko demands the location of the avatar from the villagers, expecting to find an old man somewhere in the village. He grabs Kunna threateningly and Sokka attacks Zuko again. Zuko defeats him with much ease as all Sokka manages is a lucky hit, which occurs when his boomerang strikes the back of Zuko's helmet. Enraged at being caught off guard, the prince prepares to deal a vicious strike with his firebending. Before he can attack, however, Aang arrives, riding on the back of an otter penguin, and knocks Zuko off his feet. Dismounting the animal, Aang uses airbending and his staff to send a spray of snow at Zuko and his men. He stands and faces the prince, asking him if he is looking for him. Zuko realizes and is shocked to discover that the avatar is merely a 12-year-old boy rather than the ancient master he was expecting. As he voices this, Aang's true identity is revealed to the entire village, as he had never told them he was the avatar. Zuko quickly regains his focus and wastes no time in launching a series of fire blasts at Aang. Aang is able to defend himself with airbending, but after a few seconds, realizing that Zuko's attacks would inevitably strike the people he has befriended, he asks Zuko if his surrender will ensure the safety of the villagers. Relaxing his stance, Zuko nods, as Katara begs Aang not to go with the firebenders. His soldiers take Aang aboard as a prisoner and they depart for the Fire Nation. Later in the day, as the rest of the tribe tries to clean up from the attack, Katara tries to convince Sokka that they need to rescue Aang. Sokka tries to interrupt Katara briefly before yelling at her, asking her, as he motions toward a small canoe he has prepared, if she is coming with him. Realizing that Sokka is on her side, she runs to him and gives him a hug. Kunna walks up behind them, catching them off guard and sternly asks them what they plan on doing. When they have no answer, Kunna holds out 2 sleeping bags to them, saying in a much more placid voice that they would need those. She tells them that they have a long journey ahead of them and thanks Katara for restoring her hope, adding that Sokka needs to be nice to his sister. Kunna states that since her grandchildren were the ones who found Aang, their destinies are now tied to his, which draws looks of uncertainty from the siblings. Turning to look at the canoe, Katara remarks that if they want to catch the ship, the canoe is not going to work. As she finishes, Appa lumbers over a nearby hill, growling loudly. Katara runs excitedly toward Appa, though Sokka, realizing they will have to use the bison, mutters quietly, "You just love taking me out of my comfort zone, don't you?" On the deck of Zuko's ship, the prince, examining Aang's staff, muses that the object would make a nice gift for his father. Zuko commands the guards to take Aang to the prison hold and his uncle, thrusting the staff onto him, to take the staff to the prince's personal quarters. As Zuko leaves, Iroh passes on the order to another guard and retreats to his own quarters. While being taken to the prison hold, Aang makes conversation with the two guards escorting him, assuming that they have never before seen an airbender and asserting further, in a sly tone, that he could defeat both of them in a fight with his hands tied behind his back, which they are. When the guard in front of Aang orders him to stop talking as they arrive at the cell door, Aang takes a deep breath and blows, creating a powerful gust of wind which throws the guard in front of him into the heavy metal door and sends Aang flying backward into the guard behind him, propelling them into the stairs at the opposite end of the corridor. As both soldiers are dazed by the attack, Aang quickly jumps onto the deck and forces his way into the interior corridors of the ship with airbending. As he runs through the hallway, one of the guards emerges from the hold and shouts to a guard on the crow's nest that the Avatar has escaped. Meanwhile, Katara and Sokka slowly pursue Zuko's ship on Appa, who swims slowly through the water. As Katara sits on the bison's head, trying to encourage him to fly, Sokka, who is reclining in the saddle, blandly calls out commands such as fly, elevate, and up at Appa. He tries to remember what phrase Aang used to get Appa to fly, and, casting around for it, he eventually lands on the correct one, yip yip. Hearing it, the bison grunts and promptly lifts itself out of the water and into the sky, beginning to move at a much more rapid pace. Sokka's cynical facade and grumpiness are immediately forgotten in a fit of excitement, one of which is momentarily dimmed when he turns to see his sister smirking smugly at him. Aang continues to run through the ship's many hallways, displaying tremendous speed and agility. He encounters several soldiers in a hallway, their swords drawn. He asks them if they have seen his staff before the soldiers try to rush him. With a burst of airbending, Aang spirals through the corridor, running on the walls and ceiling to evade the soldiers. Meeting another soldier, Aang somersaults over him, deftly using the sharp point of his helmet to cut the bonds on his wrists, knocking the guard down in the process. He looks through several rooms, including one which contains a sleeping Iroh, before finally discovering Zuko's personal quarters and his staff leaning up against the far wall. Seeing his staff within the room, he runs in to claim it, but awaiting Zuko slams the door shut to cut off his escape route, forcing a confrontation. Zuko attacks Aang in an attempt to incapacitate him, but the airbender, albeit with some difficulty, manages to avoid Zuko's flames, at one point even wrapping him in a tapestry hanging from the wall. He retrieves his staff after a short exchange, which turns the battle in Aang's favor almost immediately. Using the staff to airbend, he picks up a mattress and slams it into Zuko, crushing him against the wall and up against the ceiling. As a stunned Zuko and the mattress fall back to the floor, Aang escapes the room and, after a few seconds, Zuko is able to look up but left enraged by his own defeat. Aang reaches the bridge of the ship and, jumping over several stunned soldiers, rushes to the outer deck, throwing his glider, wings open, into the empty air beyond the railing. Just as Aang jumps to the glider, suspending himself underneath it, Zuko leaps off the deck after him and grabs Aang by his ankle. Unable to compensate for the extra weight nor break free of Zuko's grip, Aang and Zuko fall to the deck below. The two prepare to face off a third time, but are distracted by the sudden appearance of Appa, who is carrying Sokka and Katara. Zuko is stunned briefly as he looks at the large flying animal. Aang's enthusiasm is brief as Zuko attacks him almost immediately, airbending with his staff. The Avatar accidentally lifts himself into the air and the force of Zuko's next several fire blasts presses him to the edge of the deck, knocking his staff away. Another two blasts follow and Aang is thrown, unharmed by the flames but nonetheless unconscious, over the side of the ship into the frigid ocean. As Aang begins to sink, Katara cries out in dismay. Abruptly, his eyes flash open, glowing a brilliant white along with his tattoos as his expression becomes stern and angry. In the Avatar state, Aang waterbends the sea around him, rising out of the ocean on a towering, whirling column of water. Zuko, Katara, and Sokka are shocked by this immense display of bending power. As they stare, Aang quickly lowers himself to the deck of the ship, bending his liquid platform into a spinning wall of water that washes Zuko and all of the guards on deck away, Zuko himself tumbling overboard. Appa lands on the deck while Aang, apparently dazed after the massive display of power, collapses. Katara and Sokka rush to his aid, assuring that he is alright before preparing to leave. Sokka goes to retrieve Aang's staff, only to find Zuko climbing back onto the deck with it. In the same manner in which Zuko defeated him, Sokka jabs the prince in the forehead with the end of the staff thrice, stunning him enough to send him overboard again. However, Zuko is able to grasp the anchor chain, preventing himself from falling back into the water. Some of the soldiers recover and begin to approach Katara and the still exhausted Aang. Katara, although inexperienced at waterbending, is able to freeze the guards in place to stop their approach. All three take off on Appa just as Iroh arrives on the scene. Iroh helps Zuko on board, and the two launch a combined fire blast in an attempt to shoot down the escaping flying bison. Aang recovers from his dazed state just in time to defend against the attack, using a blast of wind to deflect the fireball into one of the massive walls of ice on either side of the ship. The resulting avalanche of ice collapses onto the front half of Zuko's ship, immobilizing it. As Appa flies into the distance, his liberated passengers laugh happily. Angered that the Avatar has escaped his grasp, Zuko vows not to underestimate the boy again. He instructs his crew to dig the ship out and pursue the Avatar and his friends as soon as possible. The majority of his crew is either frozen solid or engaged with de-icing their compatriots. As Appa flies into the sunset, Katara excitedly asks Aang how he was able to earlier execute incredibly powerful waterbending techniques, a capability Aang himself is unable to understand. She questions Aang as to why, when she asked him about the Avatar, he denied any knowledge of the matter. Aang sadly and simply replies that he never wanted to be the Avatar, indicating the duty was impressed upon him against his wishes. Katara reminds Aang of the world's need for the Avatar, stating that he must master the bending arts of water, earth, and fire. She muses that they might find a waterbending teacher at the North Pole, and Aang quickly brightens up, suggesting they could both learn waterbending. Along with Sokka, who decides to come along to take advantage of the opportunity to defeat firebenders, the trio decides to travel to the northern tribe, but not before Aang lists a few places at which he wants to stop along the way.